Democrats are focusing putting all their focus on 45's character as they argue for removing him from office. House prosecutors finished their opening arguments in 45's impeachment trial on Friday, arguing that his conduct toward Ukraine reflected a dangerous reflex toward political expediency and a lack of character that will backfire on Republicans if they do not remove him from office. Representative Adam Schiff, who's a Democrat from California, and his colleagues attempted to drive this argument home Friday to sway a handful of Republican senators whose position on gathering further evidence will determine the arc and scope of the trial. Yet there were a few signs that any Republican was persuaded, leaving open the matter of possible witness testimony and further dampening Democrats' already meager hopes of a conviction in the GOP-controlled Senate. Schiff has pointed out an increasingly personal approach was an attempt to go beyond the specifics of House Democrats' case to make the broader argument that 45 is untrustworthy, which he is because he's not to be trusted, and who is likely to repeatedly flout the Constitution if allowed to stay in office any longer. It goes to character, Schiff said. You don't realize how important character is in the highest office in the land until you don't have it. The Democrats' closing statements were their final appeal to senators for the next phase of the trial, an aggressive rebuttal from 45's lawyers that will kick off on Saturday and continue until Monday. Speaking Friday on the Senate floor, hours after new evidence emerged for 45's campaign to oust the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine started in 2018, Schiff predicted that 45's future behavior would vindicate Democrats' claims that he abused his power, and he warned Republicans that the squatter, now their ally, could ultimately turn on them. Do you think for a moment that any of you, no matter what your relationship is to the squatter, no matter how close you are to the squatter, do you think for a moment that if he felt it was in his interest, that he wouldn't ask you to be investigated? The remarks concluded the House manager's case for the first article of impeachment, which charges 45 with abuse of power over allegations he withheld military aid and an Oval Office meeting from Ukraine to pressure the country's leaders and announce investigations into 45's political rivals, the Bidens. These included included Joe Biden, who was former vice president, and his son Hunter, who served on the board of Burisma, a Ukrainian gas company, while his father was in office. The manager spent the rest of the day detailing their case for the second article of impeachment, obstruction of justice, following 45's barring the executive branch from cooperating with the House investigation. The Senate will reconvene Saturday at 10 a.m. for several hours of what 45's lawyers Jay Sekulow described as coming attractions from his side, a preview of the pro-45 case before the full-scale presentation begins Monday. The timetable is aimed at garnering peak television viewership, a priority for 45 as he faces the third impeachment trial in U.S. history. Through Sekulow also said that his side would not use its full 24-hour time allotment for defending 45. We're not going to try to run the clock out, he said this week. Democrats faced continued criticism from Republicans that the presentations are tedious and difficult to follow. That's because the Republicans are at a third grade level, so of course they're not going to understand something if it's higher than a third grade level. I just thought yesterday was like too much, said Lindsey Graham, calling the remarks repetitive and mind-numbing. This needs to end. They had an opportunity to make their case, and they made a case that you couldn't understand. While many Republicans echoed the view that the trial has been repetitive, every member of the Senate Republican caucus has voted against hearing from new witnesses or collecting new evidence. It was clear that when the trial resumed at 1 p.m. Friday that Schiff heeded some of Republicans' complaints rather than speaking for hours at a time. The managers presented in shorter spurts, rotating more often and punctuating their remarks with more video clips. After 45's defense concludes, most likely on Monday, the trial will enter a question-and-answer phase that will last for up to 16 hours. This is expected to take place on Tuesday and Wednesday, followed by a debate Thursday over whether to seek testimony from new witnesses. Democrats are pushing for former National Security Advisor John Bolton and acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney to appear, while most Republicans have shut down the idea of hearing from new witnesses. But they have said that if Democrats secure the votes to subpoena any of their choices, the Republicans will push for Joe or Hunter Biden to appear. Democrats need 4 Republicans to join them in any attempt to secure new testimony or evidence, and the senators have been targeted. The senators being targeted have been careful to say that they have made no decision while giving no indication they are moving closer to supporting any subpoenas. Senator Lamar Alexander, a Republican from Tennessee, one of the mostly close-watched Republican senators, said Friday that the House managers had presented us with a mountain of overwhelming evidence, though it was unclear which way he was leaning on the question of hearing more. Alexander told reporters that he will make his decision on admitting witnesses and other new evidence only after the White House defense team makes its case. I think that question can only be answered then, he said. We've been polite to the House managers, listened to them carefully, and now we're going to do the same with the squatters' lawyers. I think the House managers have done a good job of making their arguments, but that doesn't mean I agree with them. Senator John Cornyn, who's a Republican from Texas, raised the prospect that a Senate trial could drag on for months if 45's administration witnesses are called, arguing that the issue of executive privilege would have to be litigated in the courts. This could tie up the Senate through the election and even beyond the courts as the courts litigate these claims. Cornyn said during an appearance on conservative commentator Hugh Hewitt's syndicated radio show, "We'll wait and see, but right now I'm not for extending this for months and months while claims of privilege and the like are litigated in the courts." The question of whether the Senate will seek more evidence was heightened Friday by a new Washington Post ABC new poll showed that a majority of Americans, 66%, said they support the Senate calling new witnesses to testify as opposed to the 27 who don't. ABC News also reported Friday that it reviewed a recording of 45 at a private dinner, telling associates that he wanted then U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Maria Yovanovitch gone, a reminder of the evidence yet to be uncovered by 45's actions. Get rid of her, get her out. I don't care, get her out tomorrow. This is what 45 was heard saying on the video. Schiff challenged the Senate to call the administrator's bluff on whether witnesses would be limited from testifying by executive privilege and let Chief Justice John Roberts, Jr., who is presiding over the trial, make those calls. Calling executive privilege the last refuge of the squatters' team to conceal the evidence from the American people, Schiff argued that Roberts should decide issues of evidence and privilege whenever witnesses or the squatter claim it, but that the assumption 45 would try to silence certain witnesses by claiming executive privilege should not keep the Senate from calling them to testify. The Senate will always have the opportunity to overrule the justice, Schiff said to reporters, adding that you cannot use executive privilege to hide wrongdoing or criminality or impeachable misconduct, and that is exactly the purpose for which they seek to use it. After Roberts scolded both sides for overheated rhetoric late Tuesday night, Democrats took pains to tone down their accusations against 45 and his blowers in the Senate. Yet Schiff also sharpened his case on Friday, arguing that Republicans trust 45 at their own peril. He invoked the Senate. The late Senator John McCain, who was a Republican from Arizona, in arguing about the strategic importance of Ukraine as a U.S. ally, and quoted him as saying, "We are all Ukrainians." And he made a lengthy case that 45 skepticism about the conclusions of U.S. intelligence services, particularly about Russian interference in the 2016 election, represents a coup for Russia. Has there ever been such a coup? I would submit to you that in the entire length of the Cold War, the Soviet Union had no such success at all. Schiff said, "I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it for the squatter, because it certainly wasn't worth it for the United States." 45's defenders are focused on Biden's push to oust former Ukraine Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin, who was overseeing a probe of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma and its owner at the same time that Biden's son was serving as a member of the board. Biden's actions were in line with the official U.S. and European policy at the time, a consensus that Shokin was invoked in corrupt schemes and needed to be removed. Democrats detailed these facts on Thursday with the awareness that 45's legal team was likely to focus on them during their defense of the squatter. The squatters' aides and allies continue to portray the trial as a waste of time and one that is not capturing the public's attention. As you have seen, the ratings keep going down every day in terms of views, White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham said on Faux News. I think that next week we need to get this over with so we can get on with business of the country. Yeah, like fucking it up. Schiff concluded his remarks Friday night with a different message as he urged senators to support hearing more evidence. "I ask you and I implore you, give America a fair trial." He told senators, "Give America a fair trial. It's worth it."